The announcement landed like an economic thunderclap. Overnight, Beijing declared an immediate halt to all gallium exports, a rare but vital metal used in semiconductors, defense systems, and cutting-edge electronics. Within hours, analysts put a staggering number to the blow: $603 billion in potential losses to the United States. What made the shock even greater was timing. Just as U.S. restrictions on Chinese tech were tightening, China had found its perfect counterstrike. And in the middle of it all, one company was already reaping the rewards: Huawei. Once cornered by sanctions, it now stood poised to surge ahead. This wasn't just a trade decision. It was a geopolitical message, written in the language of raw economic power. The world woke up to headlines that felt more like the plot of an economic thriller than reality. In a late-night press briefing, China's Ministry of Commerce announced an immediate suspension of all gallium exports, citing national security concerns and strategic resource protection. For most, gallium is an unfamiliar name, but in the high-stakes world of semiconductors, advanced radar systems, and satellite communications, it is irreplaceable. And China controls more than 90% of the global supply. Within hours, U.S. markets jolted, semiconductor stocks plunged, defense contractors warned of production delays, and industry analysts delivered the number no one wanted to hear: $603 billion in potential losses. The figure wasn't speculative. It was based on active contracts, manufacturing schedules, and the absence of viable alternative sources. But this was more than economics. The move came just weeks after Washington tightened restrictions on Chinese tech giants, including Huawei. In Beijing's eyes, this was not just a resource policy, it was a counterstrike. And as U.S. officials scrambled for a response, one company was already celebrating a sudden turn of fortune. For Huawei, long battered by sanctions, China's gallium ban was more than a reprieve. It was a strategic windfall. Gallium may be invisible to most consumers, but in the world of high technology, it is a silent cornerstone. This silvery soft metal is a critical ingredient in gallium arsenide, GaAs, and gallium nitride, GaN, compounds that power the brains of modern electronics. From the microchips in smartphones to the high-frequency radar in fighter jets, gallium enables performance that silicon alone cannot match. Its applications span far beyond consumer gadgets. In the defense sector, gallium-based semiconductors are essential for missile guidance systems, secure communications, and advanced satellite networks. In the renewable energy field, they are used in high-efficiency solar panels, capable of operating in extreme conditions. Simply put, without gallium, the technological edge of many industries blunts instantly. And here lies the strategic vulnerability. China is the world's dominant supplier, accounting for over 90% of. The United States produces negligible quantities, relying heavily on imports to meet industrial demand. For years, this imbalance was viewed as an economic inconvenience, not a national security threat. But as geopolitical competition deepened, Beijing's control over gallium quietly transformed into a powerful bargaining chip, one that could cripple supply chains, halt manufacturing lines, and rewrite the balance of technological power in a single stroke. The immediate trigger for Beijing's gallium export ban can be traced to a string of escalating moves from Washington. In recent months, the U.S. had tightened export controls on advanced semiconductor equipment, targeting China's access to the most sophisticated chip-making technology. At the center of these restrictions was Huawei, once the crown jewel of China's tech sector, now battered by years of sanctions. The latest measures went further than before, banning not only high-end chip sales, but also software tools, design licenses, and components critical to 5G infrastructure. In Beijing's view, this was no longer about competition. It was economic warfare. Behind closed doors, Chinese policymakers began discussing a proportional response. Gallium, largely unknown to the public but vital to U.S. defense and tech industries, emerged as the perfect pressure point. Unlike rare earths, which have alternative suppliers, gallium's production chain is deeply concentrated inside China's borders. By halting exports, Beijing sent a dual message. It could match Washington's technological chokeholds with resource chokeholds of its own. And in timing the announcement just as American chipmakers were ramping production for the holiday season, China ensured the maximum disruption and the maximum political impact on its rival. The shockwaves from Beijing's decision hit the United States within hours. Semiconductor manufacturers, already grappling with global chip shortages, now faced the sudden disappearance of a metal essential to their production line. Defense contractors issued urgent briefings to the Pentagon, warning that gallium-based components for radar arrays, satellite systems, and missile guidance units could run out within months. Wall Street reacted instantly. Shares of major U.S. chip makers, like Intel, Qualcomm, and Raytheon, dropped sharply, wiping billions off market valuations in a single trading day. The broader tech index slid as analysts calculated the potential losses, a staggering $603 billion, if the ban persisted for a full fiscal year. The supply chain scramble was immediate. Procurement teams began scouring global markets for alternative sources, only to discover that capacity outside China was almost non-existent. Recycling programs and substitution research were discussed, but industry insiders admitted such measures would take years to bear fruit. In Washington, the National Security Council convened an emergency session. The message from defense, tech, and manufacturing leaders was blunt. Without gallium, critical sectors would grind to a halt. The ban wasn't just an economic hit. It was a strategic blow that exposed America's dependence on a single foreign source. For Huawei, the gallium ban was more than a diplomatic counterpunch. It was a lifeline. In the years since U.S. sanctions cut it off from advanced chips and software, the company had been forced to pivot, investing heavily in domestic supply chains and alternative chip architecture. Progress was slow, but steady. Now, with Washington suddenly facing its own critical shortage, Huawei's position shifted from defensive to opportunistic. Chinese state media wasted no time framing the moment as poetic justice. The same policies that sought to cripple Huawei had triggered a resource shock that would weaken American tech firms. Freed from the fear of immediate retaliation in the form of gallium restrictions, Huawei ramped up production of its latest 5G and AI-capable devices, confident that domestic suppliers would prioritize Chinese demand over foreign orders. Industry analysts noted that the ban indirectly leveled the playing field. While U.S. companies scrambled to secure raw materials, Huawei's vertically integrated supply lines allowed it to push forward without interruption. In sectors like telecom infrastructure and smart devices, that advantage could translate into rapid market share gains, not just in China but in emerging economies eager to align with a supplier untouched by Western supply shocks. The world's reaction to Beijing's gallium ban was swift and divided. In Europe, governments expressed alarm, recognizing their own dependence on Chinese gallium for high-tech manufacturing. The EU called for urgent diversification of critical mineral sources, but industry insiders admitted such a shift could take years. In Asia, reactions were more strategic. Nations like South Korea and Japan quietly opened talks with Beijing to secure guaranteed gallium supplies, while others, including India and Vietnam, explored expanding their own small-scale production. Moscow openly praised the move, calling it a legitimate response to economic aggression, and hinted at deeper Sino-Russian cooperation in critical material. Meanwhile, in developing countries, Huawei's rising profile was seen as proof that the global tech balance could shift away from Western dominance. The ban had done more than disrupt markets. It had redrawn lines of influence, forcing nations to choose between supply security and political alignment. Analysts warn that the gallium ban could be the opening move in a much larger resource war. One scenario sees Washington retaliating with fresh sanctions on Chinese tech firms, potentially targeting their access to U.S. software, design tools, or overseas markets. Beijing, in turn, could expand restrictions to other critical materials, such as germanium or rare earth elements, tightening the chokehold on industries from defense to renewable energy. Another possibility is a race to secure alternative supply chains, with the U.S. pouring billions into domestic mining and refining capabilities. But such projects take years, and in the meantime, production delays could weaken America's technological edge. The most dangerous path is escalation beyond economics, a spiral of retaliatory measures that fractures global trade into competing blocs. In that world, Gallium would be remembered not just as a metal but as the spark that accelerated a new era of geopolitical rivalry. As the days pass, the gallium ban is proving to be more than a temporary disruption. It's a strategic turning point. For the United States, it's a sobering reminder that technological dominance can be undermined by resource dependence. For China, it's a demonstration of how a single policy can reshape global markets and tilt the balance of power. Huawei's resurgence is only the most visible sign of a deeper shift now underway. Whether this leads to a negotiated compromise or ignites a broader trade war, one fact is certain: the battle for the future of technology has entered a far more dangerous phase.